Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is The Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 152. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Those 5-star reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Down in the comment section, let me know. Do you believe Woody Johnson and Aaron Rodgers at all that they did not discuss firing Robert Saleh in their talk on Monday night? Because it seems a little sketchy to me and I'm calling bullshit. So let me know what you feel down in the comment section, whether you think they are lying or not. Or do you think that they actually didn't talk about it? Because it seems a little far fetched. Get into that. But this week we're going to be diving into week 6. We're already in week 6 of the NFL season. Going to dive through the Sunday slate, main slate for Draftkings, go game by game, break down all of that. But first, I did want to dive into the Rodgers, Saleh, Jets nonsense because obviously I am a Jet fan. And if you don't want to see it, hear it, then fine. Down in the comments or down in the description, I will put timestamps so you could skip past it. Just skip ahead a little bit. But got to go on a little rant here because it's just ridiculous. I mean, I've been a Jet fan for decades, and it's just constant with this crap. It's just nonstop, and the one constant is Woody Johnson, and he is a completely incompetent owner. It's very similar to Jerry Jones, but I feel like it's even worse because he's never had success. At least Jerry Jones has won a couple Super Bowls. It's just I feel like the Jets have always just been a number on his asset sheet and just how much money can they make him. And then at random times he'll just all of a sudden seem like he gets interested. So he just inserts himself a little bit more than he normally would. And every time he does, this is exactly what happens. It's I feel like the publicity to him almost matters just as much as actually winning. And he has no idea how to win, how to run an NFL franchise. So it's just constantly just trying to do things that he thinks are going to work or make the team better, but really they just make it a circus. And it doesn't matter who the coach is, who the GM is, what the team is. It's just this is a constant as long as he has been the owner of the team. And I don't think it gets discussed enough because this is Woody Johnson's team, and it sucks being a Jet fan and constantly going through this. But Robert Salah, he's gone. He was fired, obviously. Now we've just seen this as a trend. We see too many of these defensive coordinators turned into head coaches, and they're really rah-rah coaches that just get the players behind them, and that's all good and fine, but you gotta succeed as a football coach as well. Because once things get a little bit tough, the players are gonna turn on you. So you gotta be more than just a rah-rah guy. It's very similar to Rex Ryan. We saw it with him as well. You got guys that'll run through a wall for you, and then all of a sudden, when the X's and O's aren't working, and you don't know when to call a timeout, and you're challenging plays and have no idea what you're doing, the locker room's going to turn on you. So we've seen this over and over again, where great defensive coordinators, great defensive minds, just they don't make good head coaches, and this is just another one here. Now, I've been very open and honest that I think this coaching staff is a joke. When we did our season preview, I said it to Byron. I said I could see it being a liability if they do make it a run into the playoffs and going up against guys like Harbaugh and Reed. I don't think that this coaching staff stands up. Now, obviously, 5 weeks into the season, I didn't think that Salah would be fired, but here we are. So I don't think that it fixes everything. Obviously, there's the talk that he was going to relieve Nathaniel Hackett of play calling duties. Now, that probably should happen as well, but it's not gonna because of Rodgers. Basically, like I said, Woody Johnson has handed the keys to this franchise over to Aaron Rodgers. And the problem with that is when you are an egomaniac and you are a narcissist and you have no one to tell you no, this is the outcome. I mean, the guy is getting everything that he wants, and it's oh, you want to tell my friend that he's not going to call plays anymore? Well, guess what, buddy? You're out of here instead. Like that is really what it seems like happened, and with Saleh gone, it doesn't change anything. I mean, your kicker still can't make a kick, so that doesn't help. In the Denver game, that didn't help. He's missed other kicks. The offensive line is not blocking. You can't get any semblance of a running game. And speaking of which, how are you going to get a running game going when every time you run the ball, they know you're going to run it? It's first and second down. Oh, let's run the ball. Up third and long, time to pass. You have the most vanilla offense, the most just cookie cutter play calls. I get that this read and react offense has worked before for Rodgers in the past. He's been very good at it, but you have to be on the same page as your wide receivers. And when you're not showing up for most of the offseason or OTAs and getting on the same page as your wide receivers, you can't get mad when they're not in the spot you want them to be. And then the other thing is you have Mike Williams, who's been injured. Obviously, he can't be on the same page as Rodgers because he hasn't even been able to be on the field. So after every single pass, when you're giving these guys mean mugs and acting like it's their fault, it's just as much your fault. And then also you're giving mean mugs when you're throwing the ball 10 yards over a guy's head straight into the defender's lap. So getting rid of Saleh isn't going to fix the rapport between the wide receivers. Getting rid of Saleh isn't going to fix the poor throws that Aaron Rodgers is making, the poor reads he's making. They're not going to give him more time in the pocket because the offensive line isn't blocking. They're not going to make this offense that was successful 5, 6 years ago in the NFL any more up to date and better. So it's not Salah. It's a lot of it falls on Rodgers' shoulders. And can it get better? Sure, absolutely. As the season goes on, it can get better, and we've seen in the past where offensive lines take a little while to gel. So maybe the offensive line can get it together as this season goes on. The more rapport we get with the wide receivers, then maybe it can be they're on the same page and it clicks a little bit. And as I said, they've handed the franchise to Aaron Rodgers on a silver platter. Here you go. What do you want to do? Obviously, he's going to want Devontae Adams. And I definitely think by the time you're even listening to this, he could be a Jet. Now, I would love that. But the issue there is apparently this hamstring injury is real. So, how bad is that? That's something to consider. And then at the same time, how long has it been since these guys have played together? All of a sudden, they're just going to be mind meld on the exact same page. Both of them have lost a step, so I don't know, but I definitely do think that it would be a change and a push in the right direction. It definitely couldn't hurt the team. Woody Johnson does seem like he's all in on trying to win with this roster. Joe Douglas has put together a good roster, so hopefully they can go forward and maybe make some progress. Now, obviously, it's a huge game coming up this week against the Bills. The division is a disaster. The AFC, other than Kansas City, doesn't look incredible, maybe outside of Baltimore. So definitely still have a shot here. The season isn't lost, and I think that's partially why they made the move, trying to change the morale after two terrible games back to back. But it's definitely a big night on Monday night, and some things are definitely going to have to change. And unfortunately, I think Rodgers is going to have to change a little bit, and I just don't know if I see that happening. But anyways, this isn't just a Jets podcast. I know a lot of you don't even give a shit about it, so we're going to dive into the games here. We have 10 games on the slate, so might as well jump right in. And the first one of those, we have Washington at Baltimore. Total is 51.5. It's come down a little bit, but a very high total here. 6.5 point favorites are Baltimore on the road, and they have a 29 point implied team total. So looks like there's going to be some points scored in this one. Now, obviously, if you want to play Jaden Daniels, he's getting expensive now. 7,300 is pretty expensive. He's more expensive than Hurts, which we'll get to Hurts. I think that's a little bit ridiculous, but you can't really complain too much because Daniels has been phenomenal. Obviously, running the ball a ton gives him a safe floor and provides him a little bit of upside. This Baltimore defense is not good against the pass. They can probably get some pressure on him and maybe keep him contained a little bit on the ground. So he might have to rely a little bit more through the air, but they're not very good defending the pass. So you would want to stack Jaden Daniels with someone. The problem is who? Because you would make a case for McLaurin, but he really hasn't been doing much, and his price is now elevated to 6,400. So I'd probably rather just play Daniels naked and then maybe bring it back with a Henry or a Zay Flowers, maybe a likelier Andrews, but that's probably getting pretty thin. So this game, I definitely think you probably want some parts, but it's kind of hard to stack. So I don't know how popular it's going to be. I do think people will play Daniels, probably bring back with Henry and be on their way. But if you did want to pair him with McLaurin, I think that makes the most sense. I don't know that I necessarily want to get there, and I may not even get to make or to Daniels because of it. Now, Brian Robinson has been incredibly productive this year. Last week, barely even played any snaps. I think 34% of snaps, still scored 2 touchdowns. He's not practicing again this week, so got to keep an eye on that knee and see if he's going to be able to go. If he can't, I think Eckler is definitely in play here. 5,600 is a good price for him. He's been involved in the passing game. He looks a lot better than he did last year on the Chargers, so you can make a case there. And if Daniels does get kind of chalky, I think the running game would be a good pivot there, and actually probably a really good bring back for Lamar stacks, because obviously Lamar 7,800 most expensive quarterback on the slate. We saw him go off last week. Problem is, can Washington push this game as much as since he did last week? I don't know about that. But with the team totals and the game total, it's definitely in the realm of possibilities. So I do think you can make a case for Lamar here. Obviously, Lamar naked works. We saw him in the Millie Maker lineup last week. So you don't necessarily have to stack him with anyone. But for him to hit his ceiling at this price, I do think you need to get there a little bit through the air. It can't just be on the ground. So I probably would want to stack him with, as I said, probably a Zay Flowers. Bateman seems like he's banged up. So if he can't go, I definitely would like to go to Flowers at 6,500. And then I think that that makes a little bit more of a case for Isaiah Likely at 4,500. I think if Bateman's out, we might see him running some more wide receiver type routes. And then Andrews isn't great, but no tight end is. He's 3,900 now. 4 catches last week. One of them was almost a touchdown. I mean, if you get 4 catches and a touchdown from a tight end, $3,900, you don't have to think of him as old Mark Andrews anymore. You think of him as a $3,900 tight end. And I do think that it makes a little bit more sense that way. Obviously, Derrick Henry is in play. The guy is just an absolute beast this year. Looks like he's going to score a touchdown in every game, and this Washington defense is horrific. So I definitely think there are some things that you want to do on this Baltimore side. Get some pieces of it, even if you just want to play Lamar to one of those pass catchers and just not even bring it back on the other side. I think that's fine. Or if you just wanted to go Jaden Daniels to Henry, probably a little popular, but I think that's fine as well. But I definitely want some pieces of this Baltimore offense and that 29-point total. Next, we have Arizona at Green Bay. This one has a pretty high total as well, 47.5. Green Bay is favored by 5 at home. Now, Love didn't look great last week. Obviously, he was pretty chalky, kind of hurt me a little bit in some of my single entry and 3 entry stuff. I had a great week as far as Burrow goes and just couldn't really get over the hump. Just had a couple guys in each lineup that kept me from really making a lot of money. And then obviously when chalk defenses go off and you don't have them in your lineup, that hurts too. But I think people will not necessarily be scared off of Love. I just don't think that they will play him as much as they did last week. So 6,600 for him, I think makes a lot of sense against a terrible Arizona offense. I do think Arizona will be able to keep up enough in this game to make it interesting, though. So I do like this. I like Love. Christian Watson's actually practicing, so got to keep an eye on that. I would prefer for him to be out. I think with that high ankle sprain, probably unlikely that he plays. But obviously, Jaden Reed is pretty expensive now, 7,000, but very very talented. So definitely want to keep an eye on that. Dobbs should be back and could get the squeaky wheel treatment, so 5,200 makes some sense for him. Wicks is the exact same price at 5,200. So, after he was uber chalk and failed last week, I think you can make a case to go back there because he did still get a good amount of targets and had some drops, had some terrible passes thrown his way and couldn't really get there. So if he's not really going to be owned, I think you can make a case for the three of them with Reed, Dobbs, and Wicks, and pick two of them and be on your way. And I think that's going to be pretty popular this week. Is we saw the Burrow double stack at their last week with Chase and Higgins. So I think a lot of people are going to chase that this week. So you'll probably see Love with two guys. Obviously, Kraft is still in play, but he got a pretty good price bump. 4,800 is still affordable for him, and he is the clear cut tight end one on this team. So if you wanted to go Kraft and one of the wide receivers, I think it's definitely affordable. It makes some sense. And then Green Bay's defense is not incredible, so you could bring it back on the other side. Marvin Harrison, 7,200, really doesn't seem like he's on the same page as Kyler. Just we haven't seen the upside outside of that 1 week, but you can still make a case for it. He is a talented wide receiver, and I do think he will have spike weeks. So he's definitely a bring back candidate. Michael Wilson has been a lot more heavily involved here, 4,600. That's a nice salary saver right there. Probably wouldn't play him as a one off, would be more so in game stacks or Kyler stacks. And Kyler stacks are definitely in play here. Obviously, ran a lot more last week. 6,800 is a pretty good price for him. Would want to pair him with one of those two wide receivers. Dortch really hasn't been doing much, so I'm probably staying away from him. But McBride, even being banged up last week, 5,700, think it's a good price for him. I think he had 10 targets last week, so he seems to be the go-to option here. So if you wanted to just go Kyler and McBride and then bring it back with one of those wide receivers, I think that makes a ton of sense. And then this could be a good Josh Jacobs game. Obviously he hasn't looked great this season outside of the first game in Philly. He really hasn't been incredible, but 6,700 isn't a crazy price. I think there are very consolidated spots where people are going to go to certain running backs on this slate, and he's probably not going to be one of them. So he's probably pretty good leverage in this for people going with Love stacks. He makes a good bring back for Kyler stacks. And then on the other side, if you wanted to play Connor 6,800, he's heavily involved. Obviously gets all the goal line work. So I think he's a pretty good piece if you wanted to do a skinny stack or a bring back from Love stacks as well on this one. Next, we have Houston at New England. This one's going to be pretty quick, not playing much here. Houston 7-point favorites on the road. 38 is the total. Drake May is going to be playing, so maybe that helps a little bit. Houston, obviously going to be without Nico Collins. He's on the IR, so Diggs all the way up at 7,400. I don't think I want to pay up all the way for that. 6,200 for Tank Dell. So obviously with no Nico, those two guys should be pretty consolidated target tree. But Hutchinson 3,300, I think is actually in play here. He's gonna play the Nico role. Obviously, he's nowhere near as talented, but Diggs and Dell will probably split time in the slot. So Hutchinson would probably be my favorite just because of how cheap he is. But I'm not looking to stack Stroud and probably really don't want to play either of those guys at their elevated price. Probably would lean a little bit more towards Tank Dell just for a little bit cheaper, but he hasn't really looked too great. So I'm not crazy about this game. Maybe the New England defense, they're pretty cheap. Obviously, if you want to pay up for Houston against a rookie, I think that makes sense. Jalen Polk, 3,600 with a rookie that has a gun for an arm could work out. He's clearly the most talented wide receiver on this roster. So 3,600 for him as a cheap play. I think that's a fine little one off if you wanted to go there. But otherwise, I'm really not looking at much in this game. Next, we have Tampa Bay at New Orleans. Now, obviously, Carr is not going to be playing in this game. So Tampa Bay favored 3.5 points on the road. 41.5 is the total here. I do expect, as I said, a lot of people are going to go with the double stacks this week. I could definitely see Baker with how productive he's been. 6,500 isn't a terrible price for him. Pairing him with Evans and Godwin does get a little expensive, though, with Evans at 73 and Godwin at 69. But I could still see people finding some value elsewhere and going there. But I'd probably rather play Baker with just one of them and then maybe throw in a cheaper Otten at 3,500. But most likely for me, I don't know if I'm going to get there on Baker stacks. More so, probably looking to play Evans or Godwin as one offs. I'm not a huge fan of the running backs in this game, they're definitely affordable. White had the long run last week. Bucky Irving has looked good outside of that fumble, but they're just eating into each other so much. I don't know what the upside is there. And New Orleans is a pretty good run defense. So it would probably be Evans and Godwin for me on the Tampa Bay side. As I said, Carr's out. I do think you can make a case for Spencer Rattler. I haven't heard anybody talk him up yet. I mean, they basically just announced that he was going to be starting. So I don't think the optimizers are really looking at him yet. I don't know what his projections are going to look like. So I don't know if he's going to get any talk or any popularity, but we have a starting quarterback at $4,000. I'm going to play some of them. Now, let me say this, he could be terrible. He could be absolutely terrible, but I'm willing to take a chance at 4K on a rookie quarterback. He's a fifth round pick out of South Carolina, transferred from Oklahoma. He threw for 3,000 yards in back to back seasons in college. At South Carolina, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions last year, 69% completion percentage. So not bad, pretty accurate. We saw him play in the preseason. He looked good. He looked like he had a grasp on this offense, was accurate, had some touch on his throws, threw some deep balls. He was able to scramble a little bit. He didn't run a ton in college, but he's one of those quarterbacks that he's mobile enough. He can take off if he has to, and he's mobile enough to prolong a play, similar to CJ Stroud. Now, in no way, shape, or form am I comparing him to Stroud, but I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibilities that Rattler ends up being the quarterback for this franchise. I do think that is actually a possibility. And if we can get him with these talented wide receivers at only 4K against a terrible Tampa Bay defense that just gave up 500 yards to Kirk Cousins, who literally can't even move in the pocket, I'm going to take the chance on it. And I hope other people don't. I hope he goes under the radar. And, you can pair him with Olave. Olave obviously hasn't looked good, but how much of that is Carr? It seems like Carr doesn't even look his way. He just loves chucking it up to Shaheed, and Olave's an afterthought. So maybe Rattler comes out and they have a rapport and he over targets him. You don't know what it's going to be, but these guys are talented. So Shaheed's a little banged up. You definitely want to make sure that he's okay, but 5,600 for him, you definitely can pair him with him. And like I said, it's pretty easy to bring it back on the other side with an Evans or a Godwin. So I do kind of like it. As far as the tight ends go, Taysom Hill should be out, but Juwan Johnson, you want to be the guy, but Foster Moreau is always there. So I'm probably not chasing those two. It would probably be Olave, Shaheed, and I definitely think that I'm going to play some Rattler. Now, Kamara, he doesn't look right. He's getting all the work. He's obviously been incredibly productive to this point, but he's really banged up. And I don't know. Tampa's definitely much better against the run than they are the pass. Now, maybe they give him 6 dump offs in this game and he gets 6 receptions and that's a nice floor. I'd probably prefer more in cash, but I worry about his upside in this. I worry about him even being able to finish the game with the workload he's been getting and how banged up he is. So if for some reason he can't go, Jamal Williams at only 5,200 actually makes a ton of sense. He would probably get the bulk of the work there. They only have Jordan Mims, and Miller's still on IR. So it would probably be Jamal Williams if Kamara can't go. And like I said, Kamara would probably only be in cash for me. Next, we have Cleveland at Philly. I do have some interest in this game. Pretty much only on the Philly side, though. It's 42.5 is the total. Philly favored by 9 points at home, coming out of the bye, getting everybody back healthy. They have Lane's coming back. That's a key piece for their offensive lineman. They have AJ Brown coming back. They have Smith coming back. I expect this to be a get right game. They didn't look great offensively through the first couple games, obviously, especially with AJ Brown out. So I expect this team to come out of the bye and be clicking. Cleveland's defense doesn't look anything like it used to. Their offense is absolutely putrid and pathetic. The only one that I would even consider is Amari Cooper. Could see him getting over targeted at 6,000. the Philly secondary is a little bit suspect. So really don't hate Cooper as a bring back if you did want to bring it back on the Cleveland side, but that's literally the only piece I would be looking at. I love Jalen Hurts this week. 7,200. He's $100 less than Daniels, where most people will go to him and try stacking that game. And apparently people forget this is Jalen Hurts. You can play him naked. Obviously, he can get there on the ground. He can get there passing. Now that he has these two guys back, 7,800 for A.J. Brown, I don't think anybody's going to play him. Basically, out of sight, out of mind. He's been forgotten. Devontae Smith, 6,800. Love it right there. You can play him Hurts with one of those two guys and be on your way. Obviously, Saquon Barkley has been an absolute freak. 8,200 for him, I think, is still too cheap for the workload he's getting and the upside that he possesses. So I will have a lot of the Philly side in this. I will have Hurts stacks with one of those wide receivers. Not going to go to Goddard with these two guys back. Now, maybe he is the guy, but I definitely like the upside of a Hurts to A.J. Brown or Hurts to Smith a lot better. And then I will play some Barkley also. Might even do a little bit of Barkley with a Amari Cooper bring back. I think that's a fine skinny stack. But as I said, I love Hurts this week, and I will have quite a bit of this Philly side here. Next, we have Indy at Tennessee. This one really doesn't interest me too much. 43 is the total. Tennessee giving up 2 points as a favorite at home. Levis is cheap, 4,800. So if you wanted to make a case for it there, I get it. Just I don't know. I'm not crazy about it though. Indy's defense is terrible. We've seen Levis have ceiling games in the past, but I'm not crazy about it. But Ridley, 5,700, cheap. Hopkins looked very good before the bye. Looked like he was healthier, was getting targeted a lot more. 5,100 for him. I think he can maybe even be a cheap standalone piece if you wanted to just take a piece of him in this game. But I'm not really looking to stack this game. I don't really know if I can stomach Levis stacks. On the Indy side, Richardson, we still don't know if he's going to play. If he doesn't go, it's Flacco, but Flacco's up at 6K now, so I'm definitely not playing Flacco stacks. Pittman looks like he's going to be out for a little while here. So you can make a case for Josh Downs, but he's a little bit banged up as well. I think with Pittman out, people will actually play Alec Pierce just because of the production he's been getting. And maybe he sees some additional looks, but it would probably make Adonai Mitchell in play as well with no Pittman, and especially if there's no Downs. So you can make a case for these wide receivers, but Tennessee's defense has looked pretty good so far this year. So I don't know if I'm really chasing any of these guys. I could see this being a sneaky game and maybe having some pieces that are productive. But overall, for me, it's probably the Tennessee defense, maybe Indy defense, hoping Levis does some weird Levis stuff. And that's about it. I do expect people to play Pollard. 6K is a good price for him. Indy's defense not great, but if he really gets popular, I'm fine going elsewhere because I think Tajay Spears is involved enough that it probably hurts Pollard's upside a little bit. So I could see him being chalk this week, and if he is, I'm fine fading him. Next, we have the late games. So 6 early games, 4 late games this week. We have the Chargers at Denver. This is another one. No, thank you. Chargers are 3-point favorites on the road. 35.5 is the total. Denver's defense has looked good. Excuse me. I don't even know where I put my water. Anyways, Denver's defense has looked good. Chargers want to run the ball nonstop. So I'm not chasing anything in this game. I just J.K. Dobbins 6,200, way too expensive. I don't want to play the passing side of the Chargers. Just there is no passing volume. And then with how good Denver's defense has looked, not chasing that. If I went anywhere on the Denver side, it would be Cortland Sutton. He's affordable, 5,300. I think he has a little bit of touchdown upside, but not really crazy about it. You could make a case to play either one of these defenses, but that's pretty much it here. Pittsburgh at Las Vegas. Another one. Probably not really going to play anything here. We have Pittsburgh, 3-point favorites on the road. 36.5 is the total here. We're going to get AOC, Aiden O'Connell for the Raiders. Meh. I think that hurts Bowers. Obviously, no Devontae Adams. So maybe you can make a case for Trey Tucker at 4,200. I want nothing to do with the Vegas backfield. I don't love Bowers at 6,000 with O'Connell. It just not a big fan. And then you can make a case for Fields here, 5,800. But I just there's other places I'd rather go. I think there's cheaper stacks that you can make a case for, and you can definitely make a case that there are tons of quarterbacks at pay up prices better than him. Najee with the backfield by himself against the weak Vegas defense, maybe at 5,800. George Pickens could have a game 5,900. That there's just at these guys' price points, I think there's other guys around them that I would rather go to. So probably just a complete stay away for me in this game. Next is a game I definitely have some interest in and could be a little bit sneaky because I think this next one, Detroit and Dallas, is going to get a lot of steam with one of the highest totals on the slate. But Atlanta, 6-point favorites on the road. In Carolina, 47 is the total of this one. I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to throw for 500 yards, but it's Carolina's defense. It's definitely possible. So 6,200 for him. Think it's a good price. You pair him with Drake London, 6,700. He's obviously had a rapport with $5,300 Darnell Mooney. So maybe you could go there. Mooney apparently is banged up. So you definitely want to make sure that he is okay. Wasn't practicing on Wednesday. So want to keep an eye on that. At 5,300, though, I think it's a good price for him. If for some reason he can't go, Ray McCloud has already been involved. 4,300. If he's getting increased target share, I do like that. Kyle Pitts, 4,400. Meh. I don't think there's any upside there, but if you wanted to play him in a Cousins stack, I guess it's okay. On the Carolina side, Dalton, 5,200. It's affordable. You know, the Falcons defense is okay, but they just allowed 3 touchdowns last week to Baker. So I think you can make a case for Dalton to Deontay. Deontay's still a little banged up, but 6,100 for him is pretty good. Legette's okay this week, 4,900. I'm gonna go back to Hubbard. He's just been a workhorse, incredibly productive. 6,300, I think, is a good price for him. So if you wanted to go cousin stacks and bring it back with a Chuba Hubbard or Deontay Johnson, I think that makes a ton of sense. And then Bijan Robinson is just going to be the uber chalk. I could see him being 40% in this game. 6,600 is just too cheap for him. He hasn't had many ceiling games this year. Been a little bit banged up though, and still involved heavily. So you would have to think a Bijan explosion game is going to come here soon, and it's 6,600 with the workload he gets and the upside he has. I think it's very good chalk. I think I'm going to play a ton of him, and Algiers involved enough that it's a pain in the ass, but I don't think it's enough that it completely caps Bijan's upside. So 6,600 for him. I'm definitely in there. So if you wanted to go Dalton stacks and bring it back with a Bijan, I think that actually makes quite a bit of sense there. So definitely want some pieces of that game. I will be playing some stacks of that one. Next, I expect this being the game of the late slate. 52 is the total. Detroit at Dallas. Detroit laying 3 points as a favorite on the road. A lot of road favorites by 3 points this week. So going to be interesting to see that. But Jared Goff stacks. Goff hasn't looked great, but neither has Dallas's defense. So 6,400 for him. Obviously, Amon-Ra 8,100 is a great play on this slate. He's the one on this offense that you know is going to be heavily involved week in, week out. He has a safe floor, has a great upside. You could go with, like I said, a lot of people are going to do these double stacks. So Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams is only 5,800. So you can definitely make a case there. And at some point, you would have to think Laporta's going to get involved here. 5,500, I think, is a good price for him. So he's definitely in play. I think Laporta definitely makes an interesting late swap here. So, you know, I think the Dak side is going to be popular. Just it's very easy to know who to stack him with. You're going to go Dak, you're going to go CD, you're going to go Tolbert. Now, CD is expensive, 8,600, but Tolbert's only 5K. Dak is definitely affordable at 6,700. They can't run the ball. You can't run the ball against Detroit. So it just makes too much sense to play Dak. So if for some reason the field isn't doing it, I'm going to be heavily overweight on Dak stacks. If the field is just head over heels to play the Dak side, I'm fine maybe cutting back my exposure a little bit on this game because I could consider even betting the under in this because we do know Detroit wants to run the ball quite a bit. So Dallas's defense or offense hasn't looked incredible yet this year where they're putting up a ton of points outside of garbage time in Baltimore. So I could see this going under that 52 number, but if it's going overlooked a little bit, I love Dak stacks. As I said, Dak to CD, Dak to Tolbert, or both of them, and then it's Ferguson. So if for some reason that is super chalky, I think just going to the other side with instead of Ferguson going Laporta, that actually gets you incredibly different here. And then I love the Lions running backs. 7K for Gibbs. I think maybe he goes a little bit overlooked just based on the price point, and you could pay 500 less for Montgomery. So the Dallas defense has been terrible. I think they're both in play, but I definitely lean Gibbs a little bit more in that one. But a lot of ways to stack this game, and I definitely think you're going to want some pieces. And just keep in mind some of the lower owned pieces that you can maybe swap to if you do need some late swap options. But that's basically all we're looking at for this week. As always, check out thehelmsports.com. We'll have my cash write up over there. Also, yardsperfantasy.com. It'll be up there, but have all the bets in the My Bets tab at thehelmsports.com. So check that out. The Mad Lab MMA wrote up Burrow stacks last week, and obviously we know how that worked out. So that definitely worked out. I'm pretty sure J Mac was on him as well. He has a great breaks down his early thoughts of pretty much every game on the slate. So definitely want to come over and check us out. We have a great Discord community. It's awesome. Everybody's like family over there. So great community. Obviously, Lab is the best when it comes to MMA fights. So we have all the UFC fights covered, and then my write up and J Max write up every Sunday morning for what we're thinking in DFS for the NFL. So come check it out. Every bet I make goes right into the Discord the second I make it. But that's going to do it for this week. As always, thank you for listening. Greatly appreciated. I am your host, Derek Helm. And remember,
just have fun out there.